What is up, everybody? We are here with the Deeper Podcast, Episode 7, with Pastor Rusty.
It's the number of perfection, my friend.
Nice. Coming off of our Easter weekend.
Easter weekend.
How did Easter weekend go?
Dude, absolutely incredible. All the superlative words I could use.
It was pretty awesome.
It was a great
awesome,
weekend.
man.
Starting with the Good Friday service.
Good Friday service.
Super cool. We had like 70, 80 people there, something. Like, it was bigger than we expected. In fact,
For sure.
Real talk, we put the over-under about 30 minutes before anyone arrived there. The three of us were sitting there, and we were like, what's the over-under, guys?
Well, first we had to teach Caleb.
Then we had to teach Caleb, our homeschool producer, what the over-under was. And then we all pulled out money and gambled right there on the day the Lord was crucified. So,
okay.
We did not gamble, but we really did say, hey, the over-under is probably 50.
Yeah.
And I guess, did y'all both take the over? I can't remember. And your pessimistic pastor took the under. But we were blown away, man, and people were just so... It was just a sweet time with our church family. So
it was short, very meaningful. I opened with a very, very impactful video that kind of set the mood, which was really good. Read the crucifixion story. It was really good.
Yeah, I was really pumped for how many kids and students were there.
There were
like a lot of families that were
able
to come, so that was awesome. That made it really kind of special.
Sunday morning. Two services, man, and Sunday school in between.
Yeah, so I got to be honest. You guys knew this. I don't know how many of our viewers/listeners are aware. You know, anytime you do something different, there's a little bit of nerves.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
You think, is this thing going to work right, or are we going to look like idiots for trying to do two services? You know, what if there's only 100 in each one, and everyone's looking around like, why did we do two?
Yeah.
I was very nervous about it, but 8 o'clock comes around, and we had about 150 in the room, another 30 or 40 in children's ministry. So then after that, how as awesome as that was, and the first service went well, there was a sweet spirit, man, in the room. God was very much there with us. It was special. But then between services, I'm kind of thinking, it almost went too good.
Yeah. There's all of our people. Yeah, exactly.
In fact, somebody straight said that. Lonnie Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Lonnie Jr. said to me, like, all your members are here. I don't know who's going to come at 10:30. And I was like, yeah, man.
Funny.
Fear unlocks, right?
It was cool. The first service was a bunch of families, and big families. And so that, man, it was super, super special.
Yeah, and then 10:30, man, I was really blown away. It really looked like a normal full Sunday for us.
Yeah.
Even though we had already had one service with 150. So best we can count through our count in the auditorium and how many children we had in children's ministry, we had over 450 on campus on Easter Sunday, which has got to be close to some sort of record for us. It's a lot of folks. So
it was awesome, man.
Very thankful. And it's not just about the numbers and trying to get a big number. Every single one of those are people who are part of our church family that we all got to worship together.
Yeah.
Easter is one of those days where in some ways you kind of see how big your church is.
Yeah.
I tell people that. Did we have visitors? Certainly, and we're very thankful for them. And if any of you happen to, hop on this podcast, we hope you stick around and become part of our church family. But one of the things is that Easter is just one of those Sundays where everyone, if at all possible, makes sure they're in this room. So our church is bigger than most of us realize.
Yeah.
We're just not ever all here at the same time.
For sure.
So,
everybody came back.
Yeah. So,
it was
cool.
what
a special day.
It was awesome, man. We had a great time in Sunday school and the youth, and it was a special time for that. And so it was a great morning, for sure.
So we talked about a topic that I don't think a lot of people are willing to talk about on Easter Sunday. Controversial. No one ever thinks of doing this talk on
First
Easter
time I
Sunday.
Heard
it. We like to be creative and cutting edge, do things that nobody else is doing. So what did we talk about Sunday morning?
We talked about the resurrection.
The resurrection of Jesus Christ. We did.
Yeah.
I was telling Caleb before you got back to record, my friend Pete in Wichita called me and was like, it got me. We had a funeral here this morning, so it was like 10 minutes for the funeral. So I answered the phone to make sure everything's okay with him. And he said, dude, I said, what's up? I said, you got a funeral, so I got to go. And he said, I just wanted to tell you, I just listened to your message. you're not going to believe this. We talked about the exact same thing. And what's funny is I was like,
oh, that's
are
awesome.
you serious?
Yeah.
And then he did that bit. He was like, yeah, man, we talked about the resurrection too. And I was like, oh, this guy,
man,
he got me.
That's awesome.
But yeah, we talked about the resurrection. And I think, man, for me, that text in Mark has always been really cool because it is the concise one. It's the shorter one than the other ones.
Best book in all of Scripture. Bias. Mark has always been my favorite.
Wowzers!
It is my favorite book ever. We've been doing it for Sunday school, and I always tell myself it's for me. It is my favorite.
Yeah.
Mainly because, and you hit on this fact, it is the fastest, the most concise. Mark gets straight to the point, doesn't mess around, and that's how my brain works.
Yeah.
And so it's really just an easy book to read. It's great. It's got so much depth, even though he doesn't go into a lot of depth. And I think the way he writes about the crucifixion and the resurrection is awesome. That's just my bias. I love Mark. But
no, for sure. So we really looked at three kind of overarching points about the resurrection, kind of truths that we wanted to talk about. And the first one is the one I wanted to camp out a little bit on today. I said that we weren't going to spend too much time doing that Sunday morning and really only took a few minutes to do it, but the reality of the resurrection. I think, and we're not even really going to do a deep dive on apologetics today, though we may do that at some point in the future. But what I wanted to do today is think and drill down on that thought that all of this stuff we talk about, all of this Jesus stuff, in particular his death, burial, and resurrection, which is what the whole thing hinges on, actually happened.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we live in the reality of the resurrection very often. I think it's easy for us just to go through life kind of doing our thing, and religion really becomes empty religion before we know it. Like it's a set of morals and values. We just want to be good people. We just want to try to do the right thing and have the respect of our peers and all of that. But at the end of the day, the resurrection is what makes our faith our faith. And Paul says it this way in 1 Corinthians 15. Now, if Christ is proclaimed as raised from the dead, how can some of you say there's no resurrection of the dead? Mm-hmm. If there is no resurrection of the dead, then not even Christ has been raised. And if Christ has not been raised, then our proclamation is in vain, and so is your faith.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's the perfect thing to talk about on Easter Sunday. It's something that it's crazy how much, well, like you said, it's crazy how much we forget the reality of the resurrection. We focus so much on all these other things, but what it really boils down to and comes down to is our faith would be absolutely nothing if Christ didn't defeat the grave. If Christ died and did not raise, none of this matters. None of this is for anything. But because of his resurrection, our life is changed. We get an opportunity to live on this earth free of sin for eternity because of the resurrection. Yeah. Everything is built on it. And when you were talking about this yesterday, man, it really hit home with me because of the first few years of me kind of really diving into being a faithful follower of Christ. Not that I wasn't getting taught the truth. I had Daniel and Delbert, man, they're great leaders and great men of faith, and they preach the gospel clearly. But for me, I just never really made it an impact or made it a priority in my life to really focus on the fact that, man, without this resurrection, like I'm basically nothing. There's no reason for me to be here. There's no reason for me to be doing all these things for Jesus if he didn't raise from the grave. And it wasn't until I was reading a book by John Piper, and you know how he writes. He's very
JP. Other JP.
Yeah, we got Disciple JP.
Disciple JP. Jeremy Page, and then we have Pastor John Piper.
Pastor John Piper.
Two different JPs.
He's very honest and he writes in a very honest way, and man, he was talking about just the reality of our Christian lives, and out of nowhere talked about the resurrection, and it was my freshman year of college, and it really hit me that, man, and I started over the next few weeks just really praying every day in my prayer, just thanking the Lord for the resurrection, because it's something that we just kind of think about and go, yeah, of course we believe in the resurrection, but what would our life look like if we actually lived in the reality of it? And that's kind of what you hit on yesterday.
Yeah, the fact that Jesus really is alive, and he is really going to cause us to live again. We had a funeral here this morning for a sweet sister in our church, a saint who went home to be with the Lord. And on days like today, for that family and our friends that we ministered to this morning, the resurrection has to become a real, tangible hope. I heard a lady from a mainline denomination. I saw a clip on social media, and she's just like, some people say that Jesus resurrected from the dead after he died on that Good Friday. We don't really know. Scholars are, and I'm like, how dare you call yourself a pastor? I've got some theological issues with that anyways, but what she said, how in the world can you call yourself a Christian pastor when you are questioning if Christ rose or not? And what she went on to say was, whether he is alive today or not, he's alive every time we take care of the stranger. Or every time somebody cares for the immigrant. And I'm just like, what are we, like, yes, love people. Jesus said that.
Has she not read the conversation of Paul?
100. It's just the resurrection matters a great deal. And what I love, and I mentioned the story of this professor from North Carolina who gave her life to Christ, but it's the same story of Lee Strobel. Lee Strobel in the book The Case for Christ, and even there's a movie. It's on one of the. I don't know what streaming service it's on now, but if you have services, check it out. And it's a story chronicling this. Lee Strobel was a lawyer and a journalist. So he was I think he had training in law and then became a journalist. So he was just a brilliant journalist. His wife gets saved. He's livid. Like, he's upset that she's become a believer, and goes on to try to basically debunk Christianity, like wants to just prove that the resurrection didn't happen so he can throw it down like a trump card to his wife and be like, you're crazy, and these people you're hanging out with are crazy. And that started a multiple year search for him that led with him at the foot of the cross. And I love what Strobel says. He said that moment, some people, when they give their lives to Christ, he said they have a rush of emotion. He said, I didn't have a rush of emotion. I had a rush of reason. And I love that. And that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit today, is that when you become a believer, you don't have to check your brain at the door. That this is intellectual rigor, logic, intentionally looking into the things of Christ. We can believe what we believe with intellectual, historical, factual information. We're not just saying, just believe. And yes, are there things we don't understand everything about? Yes and amen.
For sure.
And faith is involved, but faith and reason can be two sides of the same coin.
This isn't just a cloud of thought that somebody made up a few hundred years ago, and people just believed it on a whim. With no real proof.
And that's another thing we mentioned Sunday is the fact that history, and especially in the times of Christ, was riddled with messianic figures. People who claimed to be Messiah started massive revolutions, even claiming to be the Son of God. But when they died, they stayed dead.
They died.
And their movements died with them. But Jesus, when he died, we mentioned this Sunday. I wish you could have seen people's faces when I was like, his movement died too. People were like, Pastor, it did not. But for 2 or 3 days, it did.
100%.
Everyone ran. Everyone scattered. Everyone freaked out. Even though Jesus had tried to tell them this was going to happen, they still didn't believe. They thought it was over.
Told them word for word what was going to happen. But it's one of the best things that you talked about yesterday, which I think is so important. We actually talked about this at CIA earlier today. I was at the high school, and we were all the students were kind of recapping what they learned in their Easter services. We had a lot of different churches in there, and it was really cool to hear everybody. And one of our students who wasn't really paying attention because he was talking most of the time, but he did listen to this part, and it was the part of how you talked about the reality of if the disciples wanted to make this story up. Like if they got together and said, okay, guys, let's make the best story and get as many people to believe us as possible, right? Which is what some people think. Some people think that these figures that we talk about made all this stuff up. So if they made this story up about Jesus dying on the cross and then coming back to life and raising from the dead, they would not have started it off with the characters that are started off in this story. Specifically, You want to hit on it that you talked about
Yeah,
yesterday?
the women.
Yeah, the women. They would
So-
have not started it off
So
with
women
the
were disregarded in this culture. In fact, they wouldn't even admit the testimony of
Yeah.
a woman as evidence in the court system.
Yet
Like,
the most, I wouldn't say important, but the central figures of this story, the ones who are relaying the message to the rest of the disciples, are
Yeah.
two women.
yeah. So, yeah, that's interesting. And that's an
Yeah.
apologetic for the fact that these are actual eyewitness testimonies.
100%.
Like
Yeah.
these are really written by eyewitnesses. And then going down that same wormhole, these men and women who, if they made this up, it cost them their very life.
For
and
sure.
history, the Bible tells us about some of them, but even outside of the Bible, historical information tells us that every single one of the apostles was murdered for their faith, with the exception of John, who was exiled essentially to the island of Patmos. So they all died for their faith, murdered and martyred in horrific ways. Terrible things happened to them, and none of them recanted.
Yep.
Why?
Yeah.
Why would you do that to just try to spark some random move? No, they saw
Firsthand.
Jesus die.
Yeah.
They saw him alive, and they knew that no matter what happened to them, if he resurrected himself, if the Lord resurrected him, they too could be resurrected.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's cool to read this story, the resurrection story, from the point of view of Mark's writings, mainly because something that you pointed out, and we also talked about in CIA, was the fact that when the angel was speaking to the two women to go relay the message, he specifically says, "Go and tell the disciples and Peter." And I think it's super interesting because John Mark, the writer of this, got majority of his information from Peter. Mark is writing from the kind of the eyes of Peter. He got a lot of help from Peter himself. And so for that to be an important fact, the fact that he adds Peter's name specifically when he says, "Go and tell the other disciples," is because of Peter's actions right before this. Remember, and you kind of hit on this yesterday, just how cool it is to think that Peter easily could have been so down and in such a bad place, which majority of us would be. Man, if Christ told me face to face what I was going to do, then I argued with him that I wasn't going to do it. Then I did the exact same thing and then saw him die. Man, it would destroy me. And then to hear that he's actually resurrected and we can have that hope too, it would be hard to hear that. But the fact that the angel says Peter by name, I think is so, so important. You kind of hit on that fact yesterday, which just adds to the how amazing this story actually is. It's not just something that we learn about growing up in Sunday school, but it is a living reality that we get to live out every single day. Yeah,
and that's really the hope of that sermon. And even now, a couple days later, you guys thinking about it again, it's really easy. And we're going to talk in a minute about where we're headed for our next series. But I wanted to just sit with this for a few minutes, and I hope that you will this week, that you'll kind of pray through this and think through this on your own, because the truth is, man, this is a game changer.
Yeah.
This is something that the rest of our faith is built upon. Jesus really got out of that grave, and because of that, even our death is not eternal. We are going to die unless the Lord comes back before them. We are going to die. But as soon as we close our eyes on this side of eternity, we are going to open them up with the Lord. And the reason that's possible is not because we're good people.
Yeah.
We're not. Even though we have messed up, the reality is the beauty of the gospel is that just like Peter, Jesus has called each one of us by name. So it doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, how far from home you think you've gone. Jesus calls you by name and invites you to come to him. And when you come to him, his death becomes your death, payment for sin, but his life, his resurrected life, becomes our resurrected life. We walk in newness of life, and we have the first fruits of that today.
Yeah.
So you don't have to wait to experience the resurrected life until you die, but today even, you are walking in new life. We can develop new character. We can develop a new heart. God has exchanged our heart of stone for a heart of flesh. We have a heart that can love him and love others for the first time. And because of the resurrection, that's possible. So, man, our lives ought to be different because this happened. So don't let Easter be like a main day on a holiday calendar, but instead for us, this is the foundation and the very basis of our faith. So we ought to live that out.
Yeah. 100%. So what do you got next for us planned over the next few weeks? I know you mentioned that.
We're going back to Obadiah. No, I'm kidding.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
We are going to, what I think is going to happen, okay? So let me just say what I think is going to happen, is we are going to spend the next probably several months of our life as a church studying the Sermon on the Mount.
Nice.
3 chapters in Matthew, chapter 5, 6, and 7. Tons of content.
So much.
And I want to just take our time going through it. So we're starting with the series that we are calling Good Vibes Only, and that is going to be going through the Beatitudes, which is the first 12 verses of Matthew chapter 5. So, man, it's kind of one of those sermons, I would call it textual topical, because we're going to kind of intro the series this Sunday. Then next week we're talking about how we have happiness and joy in the midst of mourning, happiness, joy in the midst of suffering, happiness in the midst of our moral bankruptcy. You know, all these different things, man. The Beatitudes are those verses in Matthew 5 that are like, blessed are the blank, for they shall be blank, right? So, and there's several of them, and we're going to kind of slowly walk through those. You're going to preach one of those, I think, here in a few weeks.
2 weeks.
Yep. I'll get to interview you.
I'll have the 3rd week of it, so.
Yeah.
Right. I think so.
So I don't even know which beatitude that's going to be yet. So
it's one of them.
But I know what your attitude better be. You know what I'm saying?
I'm excited for it.
I got to laugh
I'm
at
really
the producer.
pumped, man. It's a Sermon on the Mount. It's great. Great section of scripture.
Well, I've heard, as cheesy as that is, that's a preacher line that I've heard that's actually pretty good. It's like the Beatitudes show us what our attitudes should be as we walk with Christ. But really, we're going to talk Sunday. There you go. We're going to talk about what that word, this Sunday, we're going to talk about what that word blessed means. It's so used in our culture, an insane amount. Like you go to Mardell, you're going to see blessed all over that building.
Bless this household.
So we're going to a lot of bless.
Bless this kitchen. I'm just picturing all the signs that are in like my family's houses.
Bless. Yeah, that's right. A lot of blessing around, right? You ask people how they're doing and they're like, blessed. I think hashtag blessed is a thing people used to do, but now, like, does anybody hashtag?
Nope. People hashtag.
Is there like a TikTok blessed dance or something? Probably.
No, it's probably just inappropriate.
Yeah, probably. That's why I don't even do the TikTok.
Yep.
So
it's gonna be good. Blessed. I'm excited.
Did you hear him trying to get us off of the TikTok conversation?
I'm trying.
He was like, "This is only gonna."
We learned our lesson last week.
He's afraid I'm going to say something inappropriate, and we're going to have to stop the podcast.
We're almost done. That's why we're almost done. But no, it's going to be awesome. I'm really excited,
man. Yeah, I'm excited to get to walk through that together. It'll be
going to be good. It's always good going through a book too, man. Just getting to let the scripture speak for itself. It's always really good. So I'm excited.
Yeah, so we've got lots of good things coming up, man. Yeah. It's been a good season, but the best is yet to come, man.
It's crazy because it's been so busy leading up to Easter. Like that's what we've been thinking about since January.
Yeah,
it's over.
Now it's like now what?
It's like, do we not have anything to do? Then it's like, wait, we have summer in like a month and a half.
Vacation Bible school's coming, camps,
PBS,
mission trips,
camp, man. It's about to
all kinds of stuff, and then in the midst of that, what is God wanting to do? Even in the breathing times, in the spots where we slow down and. We're, Wednesday night, even at a business meeting, we're going to hopefully purchase some land behind our building, about 8 acres, which we desperately need some room to expand.
For sure.
We're excited about that. And, man, looking forward to our summer schedule. Going to kind of do some different things over the summer. Excited about rolling that out there.
Yeah,
so
it's going to be good, man.
So many cool things that you want to be a part of and plug into. So, man, if you haven't got plugged into our church, we want to encourage you to do that. Yeah. Join us on Sundays, Wednesday nights. You can find all that info at cbcbuna.com.
We have so much to offer. Not that because we're great. We just have a lot of opportunities for you to get plugged into. Women's Bible study. We have the Preacher's Bible study on Wednesday night with Rusty, and Caleb fills in now and then. And if you want to come hang out with a bunch of loud, crazy kids, you can go to Casey with Children's Ministry, or you can hang out up here.
Or you can go all the way down to Whitney and Lauren. Yeah. They would take some help too, probably.
Go down there. Yeah, man. We got a lot of stuff for you guys. So we're going to recommend that for sure. But I think that's all.
So we want to end this podcast today with a special duet that we're going to sing together. You want to take the lead?
I'm gonna pass. I'm going to pass on this one.
How many people were like, oh my gosh, what's about to happen right now?
That's so funny you said that, because as I was running sound for the funeral earlier, Rusty and Caleb sang, and they absolutely killed it. As I was thinking that, I went through all the list of my pastor friends in Southeast Texas, and almost every one of my youth pastor and pastor friends have some musical talent besides Me and Reed Hawthorne. So, me and Reed are on an island by ourselves. We have no musical talent. Well, Reed probably would say he does, but he absolutely does not have any musical talent.
Listen.
And it's really unfortunate, but I still love Jesus, I guess.
It's all right.
So,
well, maybe one day you'll get that gift. So,
alrighty.
All right.
Got anything else? Good
That's
to go?
it.
Ready for next week, man.
It's going to
starting
be great.
in Matthew.
Thank y'all so much for watching. Share this with somebody in our church.
Yes.
And we will see you soon.
We will see you guys next week. Peace. Boom.